tonight on Local 5, an electric future in Iowa. Energy companies, state agencies, drivers, even mechanics say they are ready for electric vehicles.
But how green is this new future, and what might we lose in return? Tonight, we examine an electric future and Iowa's efforts in transportation.
You're watching Local 5 News.
Electric vehicle sales are growing, as is the number of electric models available to you. What started as a fringe section of the automobile industry is moving more mainstream. Now, before we dive further into tonight's special, we have a new member to introduce, someone you will be seeing right here every night. Welcome to my co-anchor, Samantha Mesa.
Thank you. It is so amazing to be here. I'm so excited to call Des Moines home. Thank you, everyone, for welcoming me into your homes. I'm really looking forward to getting to know the community and telling your stories. You can connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and social media, on Instagram at Samantha Mesa TV. And I'm excited to hear from you all. Tonight, though, is all about electric vehicles. There is rise in them, probably no surprise to you. You may have seen them more when you're out driving, or maybe you know someone who has an NEV. Now, this national increase isn't just in urban areas. Every county in Iowa has at least one registered electric vehicle. But are Iowa's roads ready?
That's a big question. As we'll show you tonight, the future is a question of the chicken or the egg. And before we step on the gas, we are introducing you to a Central Iowa man who recently bought his first electric vehicle. Local 5's John Diaz joined him as he takes us for a ride to see what it means to own and drive an EV right here in Iowa.
I've owned an Oldsmobile, Mercury, an Audi.
But 6 months ago, Eric Teal finally decided to make a pretty significant change.
I got tired of spending money on gas, and I got to the point where it's like I wanted an electric car.
So he took what's basically a virtual test drive of the car he had his eye on, a Tesla Model 3.
I spent a lot of time watching videos on other people driving this car, and the more and more I watched, the more fun it looked to me.
Then came the tough part, right? Heading to a dealership, going through a dreaded day-long car buying process. Well, not quite.
It was just all right there on the website. I could pick the color and pick the features I wanted.
2 months later, it arrived on a flatbed straight to his driveway.
Oh, it was a good feeling. I was excited to see it.
And excited to drive it.
Yeah, all right.
And so far, he says, driving this high-tech EV is almost everything he expected.
I guess you're kind of not used to how quickly it does accelerate, so that kind of takes you by surprise.
When it comes to charging, it's mostly done at home through a charger that he ordered along with the car.
Just press this button, pops open, and I plug it in.
That easy?
Yeah.
The car charging overnight when electricity is cheaper, and ready in the morning with a full charge for his drive to Ames. Long trips aren't much of a challenge either, with a bit of planning, which the car sort of does on its own.
Turn right onto Center Street.
So I can put in a destination into the map. It'll tell me where to go, but it'll also show charging stations along the way.
Short trips, long trips, every mile, saving him money.
I think last month I drove maybe 1,500 miles, and I only spent about $40 worth of electricity.
Maintenance needs a long way down the road.
There is no engine, there is a motor. It is hidden under here, but you hardly ever need to get to that pretty much at all. There's no oil changes, so it's very little maintenance.
And while it wasn't reason number one, he felt it was an environmentally friendly move.
With the state of Iowa, more than half of Iowa's electricity is coming from the wind power.
Teal says he's all in with EVs. In fact, another one could be just around the corner.
You already kind of imagine what the next car is going to be for you.
Oh yeah. I'm already looking at another Tesla for my wife.
Oh, nice.
Yep, so I just like this one so much, I'm like, I think I'll get another.
Electric vehicles haven't always been prevalent on America's roads. Data from the U.S. Department of Energy shows the number of EV sales by model. Now, each color represents an EV model. Just take a look at 2011. Just 2 EV models available to the car buyer. Now, since then, At least 55 EV models hit the market. And you can see EV sales drastically took off in 2018. Now, in that year alone, the EV market share more than doubled. That's thanks to the Tesla Model 3. Now, car buyers, of course, have never had more EV options to choose from than right now. Ford now has a goal of making 40% of its global sales electric by 2030. It recently debuted an electric F-150 pickup truck. General Motors announced a goal of launching 30 new EVs by 2025. But to live with an EV means more than just owning one.
That's right. And John Diaz joins us now from the parking ramp on Court Avenue in Des Moines. And John, people who own electric cars really seem to love them, as we just saw. But the industry is still relatively young, and with that comes some challenges.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Stephanie. We introduced you to Eric, and you saw that he had to install a charger at his home so that he could charge his car overnight so he'd be able to get to work. But let's say he wanted to take a trip to Denver. Well, that's more than 300 miles past the range of his vehicle, which means he's going to have to find a place to recharge along the way. And that's one of the challenges, one of the things that makes people a little bit nervous. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about range, maintenance, batteries, and really the infrastructure that exists in Iowa to support EVs. But let's get back to chargers. That's why we're out here in downtown Des Moines. We're at a parking structure. You can see there's a couple of charging stations here. There's 2 cars right now getting charged, but it's not exactly like going to the gas station that's just around the corner. Local 5's Ryan Scott really broke down the data on this, and he compares the infrastructure that exists for EVs versus gas-powered vehicles.
John, that's right. Let's take a look at this map here provided by the U.S. Department of Energy. These green dots you see here show every single type of EV charger within the country. We'll get more into the types later. Let's just take a look at the data within Iowa. As we zoom in here, you can see that these green dots are more densely located within spots like Des Moines, Davenport, Cedar Rapids, and Iowa City, and a little more sparse throughout the state. Now, even with this level of infrastructure, you can still safely crisscross the state without having to worry about losing a charge. Now, let's compare that to gas stations, specifically gas stations offering E85. Now, in comparison, you can see that, yes, there are a lot more dots for this type of fuel available. Let's go back to John's example of Eric Teal, who is using his electric vehicle to travel to Denver. Now, you can see here, if he sticks along I-80, he should be able to make it with the level of EV stations that are located in Iowa and in Nebraska. So long as he avoids these more rural parts of the state, he should make it just fine. Samantha?
Brian, thank you. And while there may be more EVs to choose from, they're not exactly useful if you can't get from point A to point B.
It's kind of the point of a vehicle, right? It has to go somewhere. So let's talk about how to charge these vehicles and who's leading the way to build that network. Local 5's Eva Anderson reports tonight.
Well, we're establishing a first-of-its-kind network throughout our service territory of fast EV chargers.
Mid-American and Alliant Energy, 2 of Iowa's largest energy companies, are investing big in electric vehicle chargers. Mid-American planning a network of public chargers, Alliant focusing on private chargers.
We work with them to set them up on a rate plan that would be most beneficial to them and most affordable for the customer. For example, we have our time of day program, which reduces the amount that customers would pay for electricity during the overnight hours.
Mid-American is hoping by the end of next year, they'll have 50 chargers in its service area, available for anyone to use, like this one at a come-and-go gas station.
We have provided the chargers. We've installed them for our site hosts. Our site hosts operate and maintain them, and our site hosts also set the fee for charging up your vehicle.
Both Alliant and Mid-American believe investing in the network for electric vehicles is essential to moving Iowa forward.
And we have our clean energy blueprint, which is really our roadmap of our acceleration of our transition to renewable energy, which includes solar, battery storage. Electric vehicles really tie into really our purpose at Alliant Energy.
Eva Anderson, Local 5 News, we are Iowa.
EV chargers come in 3 different levels. Mid-American says almost everyone with an EV has a level 1 charger that plugs into a wall at home. It takes about 8 to 12 hours to charge. Now, level 2 requires both higher voltage, needing about 4 to 6 hours to charge a battery, and are what you'll typically find at places like Hy-Vee. And level 3 is what Mid-American is working to install in its network. These can charge a battery in about 20 to 45 minutes, depending on if the charger is 50 kilowatts or 150.
Now, of course, not all EVs are created equally. Just with any new car, there are trim levels, wheel sizes, fuel efficiency to decide between. But with EVs, the big question: how far can you drive it? And that's where range comes into play. Local 5's Lakin McGee explains this essential metric.
A high of 387 miles on one charge to a low of 59 miles. That's the range for the majority of electric vehicles available this year to you. Before we dive in further, all these numbers for range come from fueleconomy.gov, part of the Environmental Protection Agency. That's the official U.S. government source for fuel economy. And we'll note, Tesla does have a Model S with a trim level, advertising a range of 412 miles, but that isn't listed on the EPA's site. At the high end of range is the 2021 Tesla Model S. It has 387 miles on one range. The low end is the 2021 Candy K27. Out of the top 10 ranges, 8 are Tesla. Elsewhere on this list is Chevy, Honda, and others. The number of other companies offering big ranges should grow this year. Still, the average range for these EV models is just shy of 240 miles. And big car companies like Chevy, Ford, and others are working around the clock to bring longer range vehicles to their customers. You can find a list of the EPA's 2021 and 2022 electric vehicles and their ranges on our website, weareiowa.com. Lakin McGee, Local 5 News, We Are Iowa.
Back out to John Diaz now. Following chargers and range, another concern about electric vehicles is they could put some mechanics out of a job. People are talking about this, but how real is that concern?
Well, Stephanie, if you think about gas-powered cars, they have hundreds of parts that make them work. You ever look under a hood, you know what you're talking about. However, EVs like this one behind me just have so many fewer parts, and that means fewer things that can go wrong. So things like oil changes or transmissions going out, that just doesn't happen with EVs, and that means fewer things for mechanics to fix. The lead instructor at DMAC's mechanics program says he's not really concerned about EVs putting his students out of a job.
The hybrid and electric vehicles will, require additional services related towards battery maintenance, working safely around the hybrid system. And so right now, since, the vehicles are still limited in number in comparison to the internal combustion engine vehicles, our students are learning the safety aspects around how to properly disable and re-engage the hybrid safety systems. But as far as actually going into any high-level diagnostics, we just haven't reached that level yet.
DMAC has a few hybrid vehicles for students to get some hands-on training with. He's expecting to see more and more EVs on campus as car companies roll out different models to the public. And one thing that's interesting is that anytime you're creating something new, it's often accompanied by the destruction of something, where something has to go away. A little bit later on in the broadcast, we're going to dive into that a little bit more. Stephanie, Samantha?
All right, John, thank you. And there's often a preconceived notion about electric vehicle and hybrid drivers, that they only live in urban areas. Local 5's Ryan Scott dives into the data once again, showing us where in Iowa these cars are registered and what Iowans are driving.
Like any vehicle in Iowa, you need to register it before you take it on the road. EVs and hybrid vehicles are no different. Now, that data is compiled by the Iowa DOT and the Iowa Economic Development Authority, and we have that data for you here. This is a map of where every EV and hybrid vehicle is registered within the state of Iowa. Now, you'll notice that Polk, Dallas, Lynn, Johnson, and Scott counties all have the most hybrid vehicles. Now, they also have the largest populations. But even in counties with smaller populations like Adams and Adair, you'll still see 1 or 2 of these vehicles on the road. So there's no counties within Iowa with none of these registered. Taking a look at the bigger picture now, more than 5,800 of these vehicles are registered on the roads in Iowa. And when it comes to where Iowans are buying these vehicles, they typically are buying Teslas, Chevys, and Nissans. Now, you can find all this data on our website on a database at weareiowa.com In studio, Ryan Scott, Local 5 News, We Are Iowa.
All right, coming up after the break, how green are EVs? We're going to dive into the environmental impact as well as the economic impact here in Iowa.
As car manufacturers add more electric vehicles to their lots, the process of creating the battery is coming under more scrutiny. Many say the environmental impacts of building the batteries can be just as bad as the environmental impacts of gas-powered cars. And John, for many, buying an EV means going green, but it seems the process is getting that green car is anything but.
Yeah, well, Samantha, when you think about these batteries, they require more materials, and these are materials that basically have to be mined out of the ground. So think back to your school days, the periodic table of elements. We're talking about things like copper, iron, nickel, aluminum, cobalt, graphite, lithium, and manganese, all of which have to be, again, mined from the ground and then refined. By most accounts, that's not a very green process. So because EVs require those batteries, making an EV is a much less cleaner process than making a gas-powered vehicle. But according to a congressional report, even though these vehicles don't start off as green, they eventually catch up and do better than gas-powered vehicles. Now, let's look at some specifics. According to that report, over the life of a battery, they'll release fewer VOCs, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides, and black carbon, but more fine particulate matter and sulfur oxides. Those batteries consume less energy, but the production takes more water. After that, you have to understand batteries have a limited lifespan. So the question is, can these batteries be recycled or do they become trash?
One of the things that's just really especially wonderful about lithium-ion batteries is that the materials inside of them can be recycled almost infinitely. So I can take a lithium-ion battery pack, whether it's from an electric vehicle or even if it's, from something like an iPhone, and I can infinitely recycle that down to its most basic elements.
Redwood Materials, which is at the forefront of this innovation, says they're able to recycle most of those materials that we talked about, and they're getting ready for EV batteries to need to be recycled in mass 5 to 10 years from now. As the first EVs start to come off the road for good, the federal government is getting on board with recycling as well. According to Reuters, President Biden's infrastructure plan has a push for EV recycling, or EV battery recycling, rather. Samantha, Stephanie?
All right, John, thank you. Electric vehicles not only pose a threat to the gas and oil industry, but also to the ethanol industry.
Yeah, right now, Iowa produces more than 4 million gallons of ethanol each year. The industry supports Iowa farmers' bottom line, especially when corn isn't selling as quickly. The head of the Iowa Renewable Fuels Association says he just wants ethanol producers to have a seat at the table when it comes to alternative fuel transportation discussions.
The fact of the matter is, the world's transportation sector is somewhat complex, and in most things in life, there's not a silver bullet. You're better off having options and competition and setting goals and letting different technologies compete for that. So while we certainly aren't opposed to EVs, we do not support some of the calls for the EV only movements.
Ethanol industry supporters aren't outright against electric vehicles. They advocate ethanol is a clean option for fuel, but should be balanced in the conversation. And just as with ethanol, the EV industry has incentives to move the industry along. We'll discuss those in about 5 minutes.
Welcome back. We've shown you how vehicle manufacturers are moving in the direction of EVs, and incentives have helped with that. Well, we sat down with economist and professor over at Iowa State University, Dave Swenson, to go over the factors that are affecting the pace of progress.
It's something you may not have heard of, but probably witnessed. It's called creative destruction.
It's when over a period of time, some new technology emerges and makes absolutely obsolete or changes our demand for what we had been using up to that point.
Economist and Iowa State professor Dave Swenson says it's happening now as electric vehicles become more popular. But that doesn't mean gas-powered vehicles are going away anytime soon.
And we're not going to just give up on all of that personal and business capital right away. We're going to wear it out over a period of time. So what's going to happen, those automobiles truly are going to become obsolete just by use. And what really matters is the rate of adoption of electric vehicles as replacement vehicles for that rolling stock that we currently have in the United States. So it's not replacing those 276 million automobiles and motorcycles and trucks with electric vehicles over a short period of time. It's replacing a large fraction of that stock over a reasonable period of time, let's say over the course of the next 10 years.
Government incentives, though, to purchase EVs and build the infrastructure to support them could accelerate the process.
Government isn't very good at otherwise providing essential services, but government is good at underwriting desirable transitions.
When it comes to EVs versus infrastructure, Professor Swenson tells us progress is sort of going to go back and forth. In some cases, the need for things like chargers will exceed what's actually available, and at other times, the infrastructure will be there even before the demand exists.